I came home early to find a stranger squatting in my cabin, and my neighbor Karen was already calling the cops on me, the rightful owner. Karen's obsession with control and her cruel scheme to force me out through her friend Jason was downright infuriating. But just wait until you see how I fought back, gathering the evidence and rallying the community to turn the tables. The shocking truth unfolded, and in the end, justice prevailed. This is a story you won't forget. I hadn't planned to get back to my cabin so early that day. Work had unexpectedly wrapped up ahead of schedule, and the idea of a quiet weekend away from everything was too good to pass up. I was looking forward to that familiar feeling, walking up the dirt path, the crunch of pine needles underfoot, and the calm silence only the woods can offer. But when I pulled up to the cabin, something was off. The front door was cracked open just enough to let the cool breeze in. My stomach dropped. I stepped closer, calling out softly, "Hello, is anyone there?" No answer. Cautiously, I pushed the door further and stepped inside, and there he was. A man I didn't know, lounging on my couch like he owned the place. His name was Jason, and from the way he looked around like this was his spot, it was clear he was squatting. Before I could even process what was happening or ask him to leave, a sharp voice cut through the air. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Karen, the notorious HOA Karen from next door, storming toward the cabin. She had her phone up and was already dialing 911. My heart pounded in disbelief. How was this possible? I was standing in my own home and she was calling the cops on me. The shock hit me hard, freezing me in place. The place I considered my refuge was suddenly the stage for a nightmare I never saw coming. And just like that, everything I'd planned for this weekend spiraled into chaos. As the shock began to wear off, the pieces started to fall into place, and none of it made me feel any better. It was clear Karen hadn't just stumbled upon Jason squatting in my cabin by accident. No, this was her plan all along. She had been watching me, waiting for an opportunity to make my life as difficult as possible. Karen was always strict about the HOA rules, maybe even a little too strict, and I'd never been the type to bend to every single one. I valued my freedom, my space, and I wasn't about to let some committee dictate how I lived in my own property. That didn't sit well with her, and apparently she held a grudge. Then there was Jason, her so-called friend. He wasn't just some random guy who decided to crash at my place. He was her pawn in this twisted game. She had invited him, or at least allowed him, to move in without my permission, hoping to force me out or at least scare me off. It was a calculated move, a bullying tactic masked by the rules and the law. I felt a surge of pure hatred bubbling inside me, not just toward Jason for taking advantage of my trust, but mostly toward Karen for scheming behind my back. The idea that someone I saw as a neighbor would stoop so low to make my life miserable was infuriating. This wasn't just about rules or property anymore. It was personal. That burning anger pushed me to realize one thing. I wasn't going to be a victim in this. Not to Karen, not to Jason, and not to anyone else trying to take what was mine. The moment the police arrived, my heart raced with a mix of relief and frustration. I was ready to prove I was the rightful owner of the cabin, ready to put an end to this nightmare. I handed over every piece of proof I had, property deeds, bills, pictures, all showing this was my home. But Karen wasn't about to make it easy. She stood her ground fiercely, arguing that Jason had some sort of right to stay. Her voice was sharp, calculated, twisting the facts in a way that made my blood boil. How could she claim that? How could she stand there and try to justify someone breaking into my house? My anger surged, hot and relentless. I was being pushed to the edge, but I refused to back down. This was my home, my sanctuary. I wasn't going to let a meddlesome neighbor and her accomplice push me out. In that moment, I decided I needed to fight back smarter, not just harder. I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find: texts, videos, witness statements. I called a lawyer, someone who knew the law and could help me protect what was mine. And I didn't stop there. I talked to other neighbors, making sure they knew the truth about Karen's schemes. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up to someone who thought they could manipulate and bully without consequences. My anger had turned into action. I was ready to fight this. And I was ready to win. A few days later, the police finally returned with clear orders. Jason was to leave my cabin immediately, and Karen was officially barred from stepping onto my property. It felt like the weight of weeks' worth of stress was finally lifting. Justice, slow but sure, had been served. Standing there, watching the officers escort Jason out, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about winning a legal battle or reclaiming a piece of land. It was about standing up for myself when everything seemed stacked against me. I had faced deception, intimidation, and unfairness. But I didn't give in. Karen's attempts to bully me, to disrupt my peace, had failed. And while the scars from the ordeal would linger, the victory reminded me that sometimes the only way to protect what's yours is to fight back with everything you've got. In the end, reclaiming my cabin wasn't just about the property. It was about reclaiming my peace of mind and proving to myself that I wouldn't be pushed around. That truth was worth every struggle.